What's good, everybody? You are watching Mobius Trip Gaming, and today's segment is Retro Revisited. Joe and Mac was a platformer for the Super Nintendo, which was a console port from a classic arcade game called Caveman Ninja, and today we are going to revisit the history and gameplay style. But before we get into it, go ahead and click the subscribe button and that bell button to stay notified for new videos and updates. This is Retro Revisited. So let's talk about my first encounter with this franchise. As a kid in the 90s, Joe and Mac was one of the first games I owned for the Super Nintendo. Back then, replay value was very important in a game, so companies as a whole strived to put everything into their games, with the exception of a few. The cover of the case for this game boasts pre-hysterical two-player fun based on the arcade game Caveman Ninja. Pre-hysterical. Despite the cheesy joke, it's not hard to see how this game quickly became a favorite for me and friends. The story of Joe and Mac was definitely, shall we say, stoner humor. In the words of the game case itself, and you will see that I am quoting, "Back in the distant past, way back, like when rock and roll was just rock and fast food was dinner you couldn't catch, lived two cave dudes named Joe and Mac. Whether it was dinosaur demolition or pterodactyl hang gliding, life for the boys was pretty cool. Cool, that is, until a bogus bunch of Neanderthal nerds crashed their village and scared off all the cave babes. Now the cave babes are out there, somewhere, lost and really lonely. So what are you waiting for? It's up to Joe and Mac to get them back." Yeah, basically it's Bill and Ted's Cretaceous adventure. I mean, just picture Bill and Ted talking about the story in front of the class, and it will all make sense. Now, as I mentioned before, the Super Nintendo port was based off of an arcade cabinet by a company called Data East. Data East was a Japanese video game, pinball, and electronic engineering company started by Tetsuya Fukuda. The company was in operation from April 20th, 1976 to June 25th, 2003, and ultimately the company shut down due to bankruptcy. But while they were in operation, Data East have created and released quite a few games. The arcade cabinet, from my research, was received well by the public, at least well enough to be ported to multiple consoles, including Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and Game Boy, 3 years after the original arcade was released in 1991. But how is the gameplay? And are there differences between the arcade and the Super Nintendo port? Big yes. This is partly because the power that an arcade cabinet had over a console at that time was quite dramatic. It's not just the graphics that are different, which is most definitely to be expected, especially in the 90s, but gameplay is different as well. For instance, in the arcade version, you have the ability to charge your weapon before throwing it at an enemy. There is also a segment where you get to ride dinosaurs throughout a level, and also the characters themselves just have attacks unique to the arcade version. In the Super Nintendo port, however, all of these I mentioned are not present whatsoever. So what saves the Super Nintendo port, in my opinion, are two factors. One, they changed the enemy density to fit the feel and attack types of the Super Nintendo port. And two, the level design is different to reflect the console's strength instead of a typical arcade challenge experience. Caveman Ninja, the arcade cabinet, is an arcade game in every sense of the word, while Joe and Mac on the Super Nintendo is more of a traditional platformer. There's also some level content strictly unique to the console port as well. Now, the Super Nintendo port starts with you only having a club to use as a weapon, but as you progress, you will obtain a bone-throwing weapon, boomerang, fireball, and a stone wheel. Yes, a stone wheel. Different weapons have their use. Bone is good for regular attacks at a distance, boomerang for multiple hits, and fireball for distance and strength, and wheel for distance and strength. Each level follows the traditional platformer. You have the level, the enemies, bonus levels, and the boss battle. The levels vary in style, from grasslands to fire stages. The music is catchy and fits the mood for the game quite well. This game is wonderfully simple, and if you lean towards these style platformers, then there's a good chance that you will enjoy Joe and Mac. Neither the arcade or the console port are long-lived. The console can be beat within an hour, and the arcade even less time, which I believe is a strength for the game. The idea of the game being longer than it already is would ruin the experience, in my opinion. Now, there was a remake that was released on November 24th, 2022, and let's just say that I have yet to find veteran gamers who played or grew up with the original who enjoyed this. If you want to get the most out of this game, I do recommend playing with somebody locally, and preferably somebody whose company you enjoy. But that is all for this video, and I would like to know what you think of Joe and Mac. Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. I'm Mobius Trip Gaming, and this was Retro Revisited.